Welcome to the Zoom tutorial, where you will be learning how to take advantage of all the features it has to offer for teaching classes or hosting a meeting. The first thing, once you sign into your Zoom account on the internet, is to take notice of a few things on your profile. First, your personal meeting ID number. You can edit it to be a number that's easy for you to remember. But this is a nice feature to have, so all of your meetings will have the same ID number, which will make it easy for your students to know exactly what number to input when joining a meeting to make sure that they're in your class. Over here on the sides, we want to check under the settings, because there are a few key things that we want to make sure we have checked. So when we host a meeting, everything runs the way we want it to. So the first thing is the host video. I have it turned on so that way my video is on as soon as it starts the meeting, as well as participant video, turning it on, which then asks the students to actually show their faces briefly. If they're not comfortable, they can turn off the option in the waiting room. I also clicked the telephone and computer audio because it depends on whether they're joining from their laptop or they're joining from their phone. I deselect the join before host option. This allows me to go through and make sure that no students will join a meeting prior to me being there and approving them. This next option here, the use personal meeting ID, PMI, this one I do check. If you leave it unchecked, it'll randomly generate a meeting ID number whenever you schedule a new meeting. If you check this and turn it on, it'll use the same ID number for all your meetings, which is helpful so that way you can just send out one link and be done with it. You don't have to keep sending out new links every time you have a new meeting. I also select the only authenticated users can join meetings. When you turn that on, it pops up with an option here that we can go ahead and edit. What option pops up is it says sign in to Zoom. What I've done is I've changed it to use your first and last name. This will force anyone who is trying to join my meeting to type in their first and last name so that I can see exactly who it is before I approve them into the room. This avoids the random pop-ins from people who you don't want to have in your meetings. Also, along with that, we want to make sure only authenticated users can join from the web client. That's directly from the website here. We want to make sure that, again, only people we approve are in our meetings. I also have down here, require a password for personal meeting ID. This option is really nice because I can select all my meetings and I can change my password to be whatever I want it to be. Right now it's just my last name. So when the students log in, it'll ask them for a password and you can adjust it and make it whatever password you want to, but it will adjust it for all meetings that you have. And then some of these other options down here are just nice to read through and check. I allow the chat to be on. This is really nice for being able, once you mute the students, to get them to still participate, because you can have them pull up the chat and answer your questions in the chat. Also making sure you have the auto-saving chats on. So that way, if you want to take attendance, have everyone type in their name real quick into the chat. After you close the meeting, it'll save it to a file that you can pull up and review and actually go through and make sure every child has checked into the meeting. I like to play the sound when participants join or leave, just so I know if somebody's coming into the meeting or leaving the meeting. And I do it where I'm the only one that hears it. I don't want it to constantly be dinging for any time a student enters or leaves that all the students hear. I want it so that I hear it and I know if somebody has entered the room or entered the waiting room or if somebody is leaving the meeting. This polling option is really nice to have turned on. It allows you to create a survey question that all the participants in the meeting will then have to answer. So I make sure that option is turned on. I also like having the show meeting control bar turned on. That way it is always at the bottom. You can see everything. You can quickly click on what you're looking for rather than having to wait for it to pull up each time. Screen sharing is nice to show what's on your computer screen to the students, and there's some other features in there. What I have selected is the host only by default. So when I'm running a meeting, I'm the only one that can share my screen. So no one else that comes into the meeting can share their screen without it being approved first. Once in the meeting, I can then go ahead and give the permission to a specific participant or all participants to share what's on their screen if I need to check work or whatever. But it's a good idea to have it selected as host only, so when joining a meeting to start, nobody's sharing a screen that you don't want them to share. The whiteboard option is a really nice feature, especially for math or any subject where you need to be demonstrating an example to the students or writing out or showing something. Sciences could do diagrams or whatever. So I have that turned on. It should, I believe, be defaulted on. And then I also have it save the whiteboard content when I stop the share. That way I can post it later. Students can go back in, view what was done on it, and maybe that will jog their memory. Definitely make sure that you have this allow participants to rename themselves, so that way they can rename themselves to their first and last name. So some of the advanced features, the first one here, Breakout Room. This is a really awesome tool to use. When we get into the demonstrating, I'll show what I mean by that. But what you can do is you can actually split the class up into smaller separate rooms where only participants you place in those rooms will be able to communicate with those participants. So this is great for if you pose a question and you want small group discussion, you can pose the question and then break them up into, let's say, 5 different rooms. So you break your class into 5 different groups, sends them off, they discuss in their small group, and then they come back into the main room to discuss what they talked about in their breakout rooms. So I also check the allow the host to assign participants, because if you don't check that, it allows us the students to choose what room they want to go to. I find it's better to assign them, so I can randomly assign, or I can go and specifically assign depending on what we're doing. Virtual background, this is the one I have fun with. If you turn it off, nobody can have a virtual background. If you turn it on, you can mess around and put videos or pictures behind you and change the way that it looks. And then I also make sure that the waiting room option is checked and that all participants have to be placed into the waiting room. That makes sure that you approve everyone trying to join your meeting and kind of helps stop the random people joining thing. And then I think everything else, you can read through it. But that's really like the email notifications. That's if you want to get emails about different things. You can turn that on or off. I like it because it'll send me an email when notifying me exactly when I'm supposed to be hosting a meeting or when I'm scheduled for a meeting. So those are kind of the basic options that I want to make sure are selected for my meetings. Now, if I go to schedule a meeting, I can do it from the website here, where I can schedule a new meeting. There's also a couple options that will schedule it directly to your calendar, where you can pull it up and look at it. So down at the bottom here, we have the Microsoft Outlook plugin, which will create a little icon in Outlook that will directly link your Zoom meetings to your Outlook calendar. Also, the Chrome extension throws it into, if you're using Chrome as your web browser, it'll put a little icon. I have it up here in the corner, that will allow me, I can, from anywhere, I don't have to be logged into Zoom here. I can click on the extension and it'll have me schedule a new meeting. So that's just a quick and easy way to schedule a meeting. Now, when going through and doing this, as you can see here, I have quite a few things that are already scheduled. And over on the side here, you notice the start time, it says reoccurring. Well, I know that my classes are going to be the same time each week, so I can make those a recurring meeting that the students will be able to see, and it also gets placed on my calendar, so that way I know every Monday from 10 to 10:45 my period 1 class will be meeting with the meeting ID and everything. And I can start any of the meetings from here. So let me show you how I did that. So if we click on schedule a new meeting, it's going to pop up, what do we want the topic of the meeting to be? So you can change it to be whenever. So I'm going to just say Friday Fun Day. And here we could enter a description for anyone that's participating. So educational game session. That's what I'm going to name it as. And now here's where it comes to the when piece. So if I only want the meeting to happen one time and be done with it, I'm going to go through and select on the calendar and time and how long. If I want it to happen every week, same time, I'm going to go ahead and click the recurring meeting. And so now when I do that, we notice it pops up here. I'm going to change my start date. So we're going to say Friday. We'll do 3 o'clock and for an hour. And then I want it to repeat weekly, so every Friday. And there's the option to do repeat every week, every other week, every third week, so on and so forth. I can also change it to where maybe it's not just going to be Fridays. Maybe I also want to hold a session on Saturdays, which I would then obviously change the name from Fun Friday. So I could select Saturdays as well, and it will schedule it for Saturdays, all the way up until an end date, so I can choose when I'm ending it, or I can choose after how many times I've had this meeting. So after, let's say, 4 times. So it'll be every week on Friday for 4 weeks straight. I then select the prior meeting password, and because I'm using my personal ID number, it's going to automatically generate the password that I have chosen. Making sure that the host video is on, participant videos are on, audio is both. And then here's where, because in our settings we've already pre-selected stuff, it automatically will fill in what we want. So the enable join before host has already been disabled, so that way people can't join before me. Here's an interesting one if you want to use it, the mute participants upon entry. This will mute anyone who comes in, and will only be allowed to be unmuted by you to start. I have the enable waiting room for my options. I want to make sure that I click this. Only authenticated users can join. So use your first and last name. Breakout rooms pre-assigned. I can do that if I'm running a class and I already know that I have these 10 students that are going to be there and I want to break them up into 3 rooms. I can go ahead and pre-sort the users into that. I just generally do it from inside the meeting itself. And then this last option, record the meeting automatically. I like to do this so that way I have a record of what happens in the meeting, as well as I can then save that for if somebody has a question about, I don't remember us talking about X, Y, or Z in class. I can send them the video of the class and they can review it and they can actually rewatch it and see exactly uh, what was said and review the chat and everything that goes along with it. So it helps and gives the students the ability to go back and just rewatch the lessons. And then this alternative host, if I wanted to share my meeting with somebody else and make them a host and give them all the options as well, this is where I would input their email that is attached to their Zoom. And then I would hit save. And so it pops up. Here's my meeting. Da 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 da. And if I want to, I can add it to any of my different calendars. So because I'm using Google Classroom for the students, I've had it assigned to Google Calendar so that way the students can see it as well. So that's how we set up a meeting or a recurring meeting from the website. Now, if we're in the app, we can schedule meetings from the app as well. However, the recurring piece is not as easy to work with in the app. So I would only use the app if I'm scheduling a one-time meeting, and that's it. Recurring, I would go from the website. Now, let's hop into a meeting. So there I am. And let's just run through some of the advanced features that we have at the bottom of the screen. So the first thing is the chat section. If I pull that up, and right now I'm in full screen, so it pops up right in the middle. If I exit full screen, it'll actually throw the chat on the side. And anyone that joins into the meeting will appear over here into the little boxes because right now I'm the only one in this meeting. I'm the only face that's here. And as people enter, you can have them just type their name and it'll automatically spit it into the chat. And then again, because I have that save chat option selected, as soon as I end my meeting, anything that's typed here, it will automatically save it to a file on my computer that I can go back and pull up and see which students were in the meeting and which students were not. If I have students in a meeting and I want to just talk quickly with one student, or one student has a question that they don't want to ask in front of the whole class, they can also come down here to where it says to, and instead of everyone, they can select anyone that's in the meeting and send them just a private message that only they will see. So that's nice for if a student missed something and they may be embarrassed about asking the question where everyone can see it. You can have them where they just send the question directly to you and you would be the only one that can see it. And then you can either reply directly to them or you could reiterate whatever if you feel that it's something you need to go back over. So let me close out. So the next thing is this polls section. So if you click on it, I can add a question. And it'll bring up this screen here. And so I can type my question. You can make it anonymous if you don't want the students to feel like, oh, the right answer or wrong answer, everyone's going to see who answered what. So you can make it anonymous so that way you just get a random pool from your students, or you can leave it open so you can see specifically who answered what. And then you can type your question here and change it from single choice or multiple choice, depending on if you want just one answer out of the answers or if you want to see multiple answers. So like if you were to say check all that apply would be in your question, you would do the multiple choice so that way they can go through and check If it's just a right or wrong sort of deal, you do the single choice and you put your answer choices down here. And then you can add multiple questions to it. And what that will do is that'll pop up on the students then as a poll that they will have to go through and actually answer the questions, and that'll send you the results, and you'll be able to then view it as a class or just view it as yourself and see exactly what the class has learned. So under the managed participants, this is where all the participants that are in the meeting will be listed, as well as if you have the waiting room enabled. At the top, it'll have waiting room, and anyone that is trying to get into the meeting, their name would pop up there, and you can select to allow or decline them entering the room. So if it's somebody that is not using their name, you hit decline, done. They're not joining the room. If you allow them in, click allow, they'll pop into the actual meeting. Once they're in here, what you can do is at the bottom here, you can actually hit this mute all, and that'll mute everybody besides the host. This is a nice feature for keeping the students from all talking at once and then you can't hear what's going on. If you mute everybody all at once, so if I click on this, there's an option here to allow them to unmute themselves. This is okay if you feel that the students are able to control themselves and will only unmute themselves one at a time. Or you can disallow that, where that'll force them to have to raise their hand in the chat, and then you go through and unmute that person and just that person. So that just helps to keep control of the meeting and making sure that it doesn't turn into a whole fiasco. You can also unmute all at once if you want to do that. And then down here, you can select some of the options. So again, these are all kind of pre-selected from my settings. So enable the waiting room, playing the enter exit chimes, allowing the participants to rename themselves. So those are all things that you can do. And there's some other things here. So if as a student you want them to slow down, you can say, hey, slow down, please. And if the students select that as well, that'll also let you know that you need to slow down. You're going too fast. If you ask them, are you understanding this? You can have them all quickly select yes or no. So yes gives them a green check mark. Then I know automatically, okay, these kids got it. We can move on. If they don't get it, I can hit no, and then I'll be able to see how many people don't quite understand it. There's some more options here, like you can do the thumbs up, thumbs down, clapping. If your meeting's going too long, take a break. I've only used that once in a college session. That was 3 hours. So really, that's not one that is too often. So the ones that I like are the quickly determining yes or no, do you understand this? And then allowing them to select, if I'm going too fast, just select that option to say, hey, I need you to slow down, so that way I can catch up to where you're at. And then over here, the clear all, that's once everybody has their stuff selected, you can go ahead and hit this and I'll clear all their inputs. All right. So then breakout rooms. This is where, again, you can sort the kids into smaller groups to have group discussions and then bring them back together for full group discussion if you want them to kind of get a little more in depth. So you can choose however many rooms you want them to be assigned to. It'll automatically, so like right now, because there's nobody in the meeting, there's 0 participants. But let's say there were 16 people in the and I want to split them up into 4 rooms, it'll automatically split it up 4 people in each room if I keep this automatically, and it'll assign them randomly. If I do manually, I have to choose what room each person goes to, and that will that allows you to make groups on your own. So for class, I generally just do the automatically because it's random, and I'm going to create rooms. And so here, you can see you have 4 breakout rooms. Now, one of the fun things you can do is rename the room. So let's say I have 4 questions, and I want group 1 to answer just question 1. So I'm going to rename the group 1, and then question 1. And so they know if they're in that group, they're answering the first question. Over here, I can assign, and as you notice, it says all participants have been assigned to breakout rooms. So what that would do is if they were in the meeting, you click on that, it throws them into their assigned room, they talk about it, and then you can close the room. And again, because I can't actually open the rooms right now, um, if I were to have people in and participating, I would click open all rooms. It would put them in there. And then if I click close rooms, it would close the breakout rooms and bring them all back to the full session. So you can set a timer. Uh, so down in the options here, you can set a countdown timer after closing the breakout room. Um, you can allow them to return to the main session at any time, or you can disallow it if you really want them to make sure that they're discussing for, let's say, 5 minutes. Um, I want to select the move participants into breakout rooms automatically. Allow participants, I'm going to say no, because I want the breakout room to close. Let's say I'm giving them 5 minutes to talk. So I'm going to change it to 5 minutes. And then I can click this notify me when time is up. So that way I have an idea. And then there'll be a countdown in the breakout room. So once that 5 minutes hits, if they're still discussing, it won't automatically kick them out. It'll just let them know that, hey, the room is now closed, so you need to rejoin the session. So there'll be a little option to rejoin, or there'll be a countdown, and I can choose how long I want it to be. So let's say I want to give them an extra minute just in case they're having a good discussion about whatever the prompt is. So I can have it set for a 60-second or up to 2 minutes, really, um, countdown that'll occur. So that way they can see, like, oh, we have 60 seconds to rejoin the meeting. Otherwise, it's going to boot us into the meeting automatically. So we need to wrap up our conversation. So those are just some things you can add in the options for breakout rooms. Some of the other things down here, there's reactions. There's a clapping thumbs up. The students can quickly select them. The record option here allows you to record to the computer or to the cloud. Again, if you have it selected to automatically record, it's automatically going to do it for you. It's going to record the whole meeting. Now for the share screen. This is really an awesome feature to use. So I can have it, again, only one participant share at a time, or multiple participants can share simultaneously. If I want them all to show their screens quickly, I can do that. Under the advanced sharing options, again, this is where we can select some things. So who can share right now? Only me. I can change it to all participants, though, and allow them to. Now, because I have this one participant sharing at a time, that means that if I have one of the students showing their screen, I don't want anyone else to be able to share their screen. So I have this only host can start a new share. If I change it to all participants, if somebody's sharing their screen, somebody else could immediately jump in and share their screen, and that causes some issues. So I would leave it as, if you are going to have them share their screen, make sure that only you as the host can start a new share. So if I want to share my screen with everyone, I click on the share screen. That's going to pop up with these options. So as you can see here, I have a whole bunch of different tabs opened up. So like if I wanted to go in and share what's going on my on my Google Chrome site, I can click on that and that'll show the students my Google Chrome. If I have a website or a PowerPoint or something like that pulled up, those would also pop up here. The other thing that I really like is this whiteboard feature. That's the one that I made sure was turned on in my options. If I share that, it pulls up here. What happens is it pulls up a whiteboard, a blank white page. And it allows me to, I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. So it allows me to create this whiteboard. And if I click on the whiteboard options, I can go through. So I can enter text, I can draw, I can do different stamps, I can highlight stuff. The eraser erases things, obviously. I can change the format to change the colors or whatnot. So let's say I want to do a problem with the students. So I'm going to start just using my computer and I'll write out something. So let's just do a basic equation. So 3x plus 4 equals 10. So I could write out my example problem, and then I can, over on the side here, you'll notice that my screen is still active, and anybody else who would also be in the room, their list would go, I would see multiple cameras all the way down, and there'd be a click down option. And then what I can do from here is if I'm asking the students, okay, what's the next step? I can have them raise their hand. I can unmute them quickly over on the side here, and they can say, the next step would be to subtract 4. And so then I can demonstrate, okay, yep, so we're going to subtract 4, and that'll give me 3x equals 6. And so I can do problems like that. I can change the colors, as I said. The eraser allows me to erase things quickly, so anything that's connected automatically gets erased. And then if I want to keep something, so let's say I'm doing an example that I really want all the students to know and have in their notes, I'm going to write it out, and then I'm going to hit save. And what that will do is that's going to save the whiteboard into a file at the end, so when I exit my meeting, it's there. If I want to do a new whiteboard, I can just share a second one, and that'll keep adding more and more and more. I can also, up from here, I can still access the chat quickly, the breakout rooms, and still have all those options for me. I can pause the share, so that way, like, if I want to add something to this screen, but I don't want the students to see me adding stuff yet, if I hit that pause share, whatever I do on here, the student screen will remain what was there before I paused it. And then as soon as I hit resume, whatever I've added to the screen will now pop up. So if I want them to go through and work through that problem of 3x plus 4 equals 10, what I can do is I can pause it. I can put them in breakout rooms, have them talk through it. And while they're there, I can go ahead and I can go through and show the steps. So 3x equals 6, divide by 3. So x equals 2. So when they come back, their screen will still only show that 3x plus 4 equals 10 bit. But then when I ask them to kind of explain themselves and talk through it, what answer did you get, they can start sharing their answers. And then if I hit the resume, then all this other stuff that I've written down will pop up. They'll be able to check their work and see exactly what mistakes they made or where they went wrong. Or if they solved it a different way, maybe they'll be able to tell you how they solved it. And then when you're done sharing your screen and you want to get back to just the videos, you're going to come up here and hit the stop share. And that'll bring us right back to the main screen. So that's a little bit of an in-depth running of how to use Zoom and some of the features that it has. When you're done with the meeting, you can hit the end meeting for all. That automatically boots everybody out of the meeting. And here it's already going to show me, okay, here's the stuff that you wrote on your whiteboards. The first one was the one that you saved. The second one, I didn't save it, but because I have that option to save all whiteboard stuff, it automatically saved it as a PNG file. So I can post this on either my website or just leave it in a file that if a student asks me, hey, was example number 3, I can just quickly email them that picture. And so if there are any other questions that you have, feel free to email me. I'll try and work through it with you. But that's kind of the basics around how to run a meeting and take advantage of some of the features that Zoom has to offer.